Delphi Murders exposed the unsolved mystery of Libby German via Abby Williams. In the quiet town of Delphi, Indiana, where neighbors greet one another by name and life ambles along with a peaceful rhythm, an unspeakable tragedy shattered that calm. To best friends, Libby German, just 14 years old, and Abigail Abby Williams, only 13, shared more than just a friendship. They shared dreams, laughter, and the simple, unburdened joys of youth. For them, having a best friend meant always having someone to lean on. But on that fateful day, that unbreakable bond was abruptly severed, leaving a void that still haunts the community. The story begins on a seemingly ordinary Monday, February 13th, 2017, a day that started with the promise of an ordinary adventure and ended in a nightmare that would forever stain the memories of those who knew them. Libby and Abby were the embodiment of youthful innocence, their lives brimming with the hope and vibrancy of a future yet to be written. Little did they know that their last moments of shared laughter would be captured forever in a single, haunting image. It was a day like any other in Delphi. The morning sun filtered softly through the windows of Libby's family home, casting warm hues across a room filled with art supplies, school books, and the excited chatter of the best friends enjoying a rare day off from school. As the clock ticked toward the afternoon, a spark of adventure ignited within them. They planned to visit a local nature reserve, a place that boasted rugged beauty and quiet charm, centered around the historic Monon High Bridge. The Monon High Bridge, an imposing relic constructed in 1891, stood as a silent witness to the passage of time. Once a bustling railway bridge, it had long been abandoned, yet it retained an eerie allure. Locals often frequented the site to capture its majestic decay, to snap photos, and to momentarily escape the routine of daily life. For Libby and Abby, the bridge was more than just an old structure. It was the setting for their last shared adventure. Accompanied by Libby's older sister, Kelsey, the girls were dropped off near the bridge around 1:30 in the afternoon. The area was a study in contrasts, wild, unspoiled nature intertwined with the remnants of a bygone era. Tall trees framed the scene, their leaves whispering secrets with every passing breeze, while the weathered planks of the bridge beckoned with silent stories of the past. It was here, amidst the gentle hum of nature and the echoes of history, that fate would intervene. At approximately 2:07 in the afternoon, in a moment that would forever alter the course of events, Libby took out her phone and shared a Snapchat photo. The image captured Abby delicately crossing over the aged, creaking wooden planks of the bridge, a simple act of youthful exploration that, unbeknownst to anyone, marked the final chapter of their carefree day. In that fleeting instant, the innocent joy of friendship was imprinted into digital memory, a memory that would soon become the last known evidence of their presence. Soon after that ill-fated snapshot, the day took a tragic turn. When Libby's father arrived to pick up the girls, the house that once resonated with laughter fell unnervingly silent. Calls to their phones went unanswered. At first, there was mere confusion. Then, as minutes turned to agonizing hours, a chilling realization took hold, of dread that perhaps something unspeakable had occurred. The disappearance of Libby and Abby was not just a momentary lapse. It was the catalyst for a mystery that would grip Delphi with terror and disbelief. As news of their disappearance spread, the community rallied together in a desperate search. Neighbors, friends, and local authorities mobilized, combing the darkened woods with flashlights and hope. Every rustle in the underbrush, every whispered possibility, deepened the mounting anxiety. Yet amid the chaos and sorrow, an eerie undercurrent began to emerge, a suggestion that the events of the day were not merely random, but part of a larger, more sinister tapestry. Whispers began circulating that the girls' fate might be intertwined with occult practices. A dark cult, some claimed, had taken them as part of a ritual sacrifice. Though this theory was met with both shock and skepticism, investigators could not entirely dismiss the possibility. The notion that Libby and Abby might have been targeted for reasons beyond simple malice added a disturbing layer of complexity to an already perplexing case. Was this a case of a disturbed individual hiding in plain sight, or did it conceal a more elaborate, ritualistic motive? These questions, along with the haunting images captured on Libby's phone, laid the foundation for one of Delphi's most chilling mysteries. Even as investigators painstakingly pieced together the evidence, a pressing warning reverberated throughout the community. In 2019, during a tense press conference, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter delivered a message that struck fear into the hearts of residents. He warned that the killer was likely still among them, hiding in plain sight, merging seamlessly with the very people they trusted and admired. Superintendent Carter's words were as clear as they were alarming. His statement resonated with a stark truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous individuals are those who walk among us, their sinister deeds masked by an ordinary facade. That chilling pronouncement set the tone for the renewed investigation, a call to scrutinize every face in the crowd and to look beyond the surface of a seemingly peaceful community. The story of Libby and Abby is not merely a recounting of events, it is a profound reminder of how fragile life can be and how even the most idyllic moments can be shattered in an instant. The echoes of their laughter, once so vibrant and full of promise, have now become a haunting refrain for a town desperate for answers. Their disappearance is a wound that time has not healed, a wound that continues to fester in the collective memory of Delphi. As we embark on this journey to uncover every fragment of truth hidden within the darkness, we invite you to listen closely. The details of this case are as disturbing as they are complex, and each revelation brings us one step closer to understanding the heart of a mystery that has defied resolution for far too long. The killer, it seems, has not only evaded capture but has also become a ghost in the midst of our everyday lives. A reminder that the face of evil can be shockingly ordinary. In this narrative, we will peel back the layers of time and memory, examining every clue, every whispered theory, and every heartbreaking moment that led to this tragedy. We will explore how a day of innocent adventure transformed into a chilling nightmare, and how the relentless search for truth has forced a community to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. Stay with us as we delve deeper into a case that challenges our understanding of good and evil. A case where justice remains elusive and the shadows of the past stretch long into the present. The story of Libby and Abby is not just a tale of loss. It is a call to remain vigilant, to question the familiar, and to remember that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are hidden in plain sight. The morning of February 13, 2017 began like any other day in the small, close-knit town of Delphi, Indiana. In the heart of this community, life moved at a gentle, familiar pace, one punctuated by warm greetings, shared laughter, and the promise of another ordinary day. Yet for two young girls, this day was destined to be anything but ordinary. Inside the comfortable walls of the German family home, the air was filled with the soft hum of excitement. Libby German, a bright 14-year-old with a contagious smile and an insatiable curiosity for life, was eagerly preparing for a day off from school. Her home, usually bustling with the rhythm of daily routines and academic endeavors, had transformed into a sanctuary of creativity and possibility. Art supplies were scattered across the table, and remnants of a late-night project still lingered in every corner, an echo of the boundless energy that only youth can embody. Beside her, Abigail Abby Williams, just 13, shared in the enthusiasm of the day. Their friendship was a tapestry, woven from countless shared moments, secrets whispered under starlit skies, bursts of uncontrollable laughter, and the comfort of knowing they had each other's back no matter what. Together, they were an unstoppable force of adventure and joy. As the morning light softened into a gentle glow, the girls planned the day ahead. With school temporarily out of the picture, a spirit of liberation enveloped them. They spoke excitedly about venturing out into the natural world that lay just beyond the familiar streets of Delphi. Their destination was a local nature reserve that cradled the historic Monon High Bridge, a landmark that had stood for over a century. its weathered planks and rusted railings bearing silent testimony to days gone by. The decision was as spontaneous as it was natural. It was a chance to escape into a realm where the ordinary gave way to the extraordinary, where every twist in the wooded trail promised the thrill of discovery. The historic bridge, with its haunting beauty and storied past, beckoned to them like a long-forgotten friend, inviting them to step into a world that was both enchanting and mysterious. Recognizing the potential for adventure, Libby's older sister, Kelsey, stepped in to lend a helping hand, with a protective air about her and the gentle maturity of someone who had seen enough of the world to know its dangers. Kelsey agreed to drive the girls to their destination. At around 1:30 in the afternoon, the car wound its way through the quiet roads of Delphi, carrying the two friends toward what they believed would be an afternoon of innocent exploration. The nature reserve itself was a study in contrast, a seamless blend of raw, untamed beauty and the lingering echoes of human history. Tall trees stretched their branches skyward, their leaves whispering secrets with every caress of the wind. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in dappled patterns, casting playful shadows on the forest floor. Amid the serene tableau stood the Monon High Bridge, a monumental structure constructed in 1891 that had once served as a bustling conduit for trains and travelers alike. Now, it was an emblem of the passage of time, its wooden planks worn smooth by decades of weather and use, its metal arches slowly succumbing to rust. For Libby and Abby, the bridge was more than a relic. It was a portal to a world of adventure. They arrived at the site with hearts full of anticipation and minds brimming with dreams. The girls set foot on the grassy verge, their eyes wide with wonder as they took in the beauty that surrounded them. Every leaf, every crevice of the ancient structure seemed to hold a story waiting to be told. In the early moments of their arrival, the day felt timeless. They wandered along the trails that meandered through the reserve, occasionally pausing to admire a particularly striking view, or to capture a snapshot of nature's quiet splendor. The sound of their laughter blended harmoniously with the rustle of the wind, and the soft chirping of birds, a symphony of life that celebrated the innocence of youth and the fleeting nature of these precious moments. There was a particular sense of freedom that day, a liberation from the confines of routine and expectation. With no immediate worries to tether them down, Libby and Abby embraced every minute of their shared adventure. They raced along narrow paths, their feet barely touching the ground as they darted between shafts of sunlight and patches of shadow. The air was filled with the scent of pine and earth, a natural perfume that heightened their senses and deepened their connection to the landscape around them. As the afternoon advanced, the girls eventually made their way to the iconic Monon High Bridge. There, suspended between the past and the present, they found themselves drawn to its time-worn structure. The bridge's planks, though weathered and creaking under the weight of history, offered a platform for their carefree exploration. With a sense of both trepidation and excitement, they stepped onto the bridge, each step a quiet defiance against the silent toll of time. It was on this very bridge that, at around 07 p.m., Libby decided to capture a moment that seemed to encapsulate the spirit of the day. With her phone in hand, she snapped a photo and sent a brief Snapchat update. The image showed Abby, poised carefully as she navigated the old wooden planks, a moment of quiet bravery, of innocent determination, and of pure, unfiltered youth. In that single frame, the carefree joy of the afternoon was preserved, a digital echo of a memory that would soon become tragically final. Unbeknownst to them, this was the last recorded moment of their adventure, a moment that would later echo through the halls of time as a reminder of what was lost. The serene beauty of the reserve, the gentle murmur of nature, and the laughter of two best friends had converged in that instant, creating a tableau of innocence that would be forever marred by the events to come. After capturing the photo, the girls continued to explore, their minds still alight with the wonder of their surroundings. They chatted about everything and nothing, their voices mingling with the natural sounds that enveloped them. For a while, the world seemed perfect, a delicate balance of beauty, simplicity, and the unbreakable bond they shared. Yet, As the afternoon began its slow descent toward evening, an unspoken tension began to build in the background. There was no inkling of the impending darkness that would soon overshadow their joy. The natural world around them, with all its gentle splendor, remained blissfully unaware of the tragedy that was quietly taking shape, a tragedy that would soon ripple through the fabric of Delphi, leaving a scar that time might never fully heal. For now, in that fleeting moment of shared adventure, Libby and Abby were simply two friends savoring the beauty of a day that promised endless possibilities. They had no idea that the very act of stepping onto the old bridge, of capturing a simple photo on a crisp February afternoon, would mark the end of their journey together. Instead, they reveled in the present, a present filled with laughter, light, and the boundless promise of youth. As the day wore on, the reserve began to transform. The playful energy of the morning yielded to a more contemplative mood as shadows lengthened, and the golden hues of the afternoon softened into twilight. The quiet corners of the forest grew hushed, as if nature itself was holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. In those final hours, every detail of their adventure, every whispered word, every shared smile took on an almost sacred quality. The memories they forged on that day, however ephemeral, would soon be seared into the collective consciousness of Delphi. The beauty of the nature reserve, the majestic presence of the Monon High Bridge, and the tender friendship of two young girls were all set against the backdrop of an unfolding mystery that none could have foreseen. And so, as Libby and Abby continued to explore the landscape of their innocent world, they were unaware that their day of adventure was the prelude to a story that would challenge the very notions of safety and trust within their community. Their laughter, echoing amidst the rustling leaves and creaking wood, was a testament to the vibrancy of life, a life that would soon be overshadowed by the profound loss and the relentless search for answers. In the warmth of the February day, amidst the natural beauty and the promise of adventure, the stage was silently being set. The day of innocence, filled with promise and light, was on the verge of being eclipsed by an unspeakable darkness, a darkness that would forever change the lives of those who called Delphi home. In the midst of a day that had begun with so much promise, the atmosphere shifted in an instant. At around 07 p.m., as Libby and Abby explored the weathered expanse of the Monon High Bridge, a seemingly ordinary moment was captured, a moment that would soon become forever etched in the memories of everyone who would come to know the tragedy. With her phone in hand, Libby snapped a quick photo and sent out a Snapchat update. The image, fleeting yet poignant, showed Abby carefully traversing the time-worn wooden planks of the bridge. There was a grace in her movement, a quiet confidence that only youth can exude. And for a brief second, it seemed as if nothing could mar the lightheartedness of their adventure. But that simple act of capturing a moment of innocent exploration would soon serve as the last digital echo of a day that had once promised endless possibilities. Unbeknownst to the two friends, the snapshot was not just a memory. It was a silent witness to the moment before everything changed. After that final photo, the girls continued to wander along the bridge and its surrounding trails, their voices mingling with the whisper of the wind and the rustle of leaves. The natural beauty of the reserve provided a comforting backdrop, a stark contrast to the ominous turn of events that lay ahead. As the afternoon progressed, time seemed to both stretch and collapse, holding its breath as the shadow of impending doom grew ever nearer. Then, as the clock ticked forward toward late afternoon, reality began to intrude upon the carefree world that Libby and Abby had inhabited just moments before. In a quiet neighborhood not far from the nature reserve, Libby's father arrived at their home, expecting to be greeted by the familiar sounds of his daughters returning from a day of exploration and laughter. Instead, he was met with a silence so profound it echoed through the empty halls. Calls were made, each ring heightening the anxiety that was already building. When the phones rang unanswered, a creeping dread set in, a feeling that something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. At first, the absence of the girls was met with a sense of confusion. They might have gotten caught up in an adventure, some reassured themselves. But as minutes slipped into what felt like an eternity, the confusion gave way to panic. The realization that Libby and Abby were nowhere to be found struck with the force of a tidal wave, leaving the family reeling in disbelief and heartache. The warm, secure world of their home, once filled with the sound of playful banter and the rustle of daily routines, had been abruptly silenced by an absence that defied explanation. Within hours, the quiet streets of Delphi were stirred into action. Family members, neighbors, and community volunteers mobilized, their determination fueled by a desperate hope that the girls might still be found unharmed. Search parties spread out across the familiar routes of the nature reserve, their flashlights cutting through the gathering darkness in a determined quest for any sign of the missing duo. Every rustle of the underbrush, every whisper of the wind became a potential clue in a mystery that was rapidly spiraling out of control. In the days that followed, the initial confusion hardened into an unyielding nightmare for those left behind. The community of Delphi, a place where everyone once trusted the face of the other, found itself gripped by a pervasive fear. Parents locked their doors a little tighter and exchanged worried glances on quiet streets. The disappearance of Libby and Abby was no longer an isolated incident. It had become a catalyst for a wave of collective terror that challenged the very notion of safety. In a town once defined by its close-knit bonds, investigators began to piece together the timeline of that fateful afternoon with painstaking detail. Libby's Snapchat photo emerged as the sole digital trace of the girls. After their arrival at the reserve, it was a snapshot frozen in time, capturing Abby's careful steps on the bridge, a moment that, in hindsight, carried an unsettling weight. Analysts and forensic experts scrutinized the image, seeking any detail that might provide insight into what happened in the crucial minutes that followed. Every pixel was examined, every shadow analyzed, as if the answer lay hidden in the interplay of light and darkness captured on that screen. Meanwhile, the emotional toll on Libby's family became increasingly apparent. What had begun as a simple, joyful outing had rapidly morphed into a situation filled with unanswered questions and desperate pleas. Libby's father, along with other family members, was left grappling with a crushing uncertainty relentless, gnawing fear that the girls might have fallen victim to something far more sinister than a mere misadventure. The silence that had descended upon their home was deafening, each unanswered phone call and every passing moment amplifying the sense of loss and desperation. As the hours turned into days, the initial search efforts, though thorough and heartfelt, yielded little in the way of definitive answers. Volunteers retraced every step along the trails of the reserve, combed through the dense underbrush, and revisited the iconic bridge in hopes of finding a clue, a scrap of fabric, a footprint, any remnant of the girls' presence. Yet, with each passing hour, the possibility that the truth might be forever hidden in the shadows grew more disquieting. The community's efforts, however, were not in vain. Even as the search parties faced the grim reality of a mystery that defied easy explanation, fragments of evidence began to emerge. Witnesses came forward with memories of a figure seen near the bridge, a person whose presence had been fleeting and whose features were blurred by the distance and dim lighting. This mysterious individual, who would later be referred to as Bridge Guy, became a focal point of the investigation, though his image was captured only briefly and in grainy detail. The figure served as a grim reminder that something or someone was present on that fateful afternoon, lurking just beyond the reach of the light. Despite these hints, the urgency of the situation pressed on. Every minute that passed without an answer deepened the wound inflicted on the families and the community. The void left by Libby and Abby's disappearance was not just a physical absence. It was a rupture in the fabric of trust that bound the town together. Fear mingled with sorrow, and every conversation in Delphi seemed to carry the weight of uncertainty and loss. In the midst of this collective anxiety, questions began to multiply. How could the bright, vivacious girls vanish without a trace? What force or individual could be capable of orchestrating such a disappearance? And perhaps most haunting of all, Was the killer or killers someone who was hiding in plain sight, concealed behind the everyday facade of a seemingly ordinary life? These questions would soon fuel a long and arduous investigation, one that would force everyone in Delphi to confront the harsh reality that the monsters we fear might not be lurking in the shadows of far-off places, but might instead be hiding right next door. The disappearance of Libby and Abby had shattered the illusion of safety and forced a community to reckon with the possibility that evil could reside in the most unexpected corners. As dusk turned to night, the once familiar landscape of the nature reserve was transformed into a stage for a grim drama. The soft glow of searchlights swept across the darkened woods, illuminating fleeting glimpses of hope that were quickly swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Every sound, the snap of a twig underfoot, the distant call of an owl was magnified in the silence of loss, resonating with a sense of urgency and sorrow that was impossible to ignore. In the quiet hours of that first night, as family members and neighbors huddled together in their shared grief, the full magnitude of the mystery began to settle in. The disappearance of Libby and Abby was no longer a distant problem, to be solved by authorities alone. It had become a personal tragedy that affected every member of the community. The search for answers was no longer just a duty, it was a desperate, all-consuming need to reclaim the innocence and security that had been so brutally stripped away. In the days that followed, investigators continued to work tirelessly, driven by the hope that somewhere amidst the chaos and uncertainty, a clue would emerge that could unravel the mystery of that fateful afternoon. The community, too, remained vigilant, united by a shared determination to ensure that the memory of Libby and Abby would not be forgotten, and that justice, however elusive, would ultimately prevail. This period of frantic search and raw emotion marked the beginning of a long, arduous journey, a journey that would expose the dark undercurrents of a town once considered safe, and that would force everyone involved to confront the terrifying possibility that evil could wear the most unassuming of faces. The disappearance of Libby and Abby was not just a case to be solved. It was a wound that would score the community for years to come, a stark reminder that sometimes the most ordinary days can hide the most extraordinary horrors. In the quiet aftermath of the fateful day, as night bled into dawn, the haunting silence left in the wake of their disappearance served as a constant, mournful refrain, a call for answers that would drive the investigation forward, and a solemn reminder that in Delphi, the shadows had grown longer, and the search for truth had only just begun. In the wake of Libby and Abby's disappearance, Delphi transformed from a quiet town into a flurry of determined activity. As dusk gave way to a starless night, neighbors and family members converged on the nature reserve, their hearts heavy with grief and urgency. With flashlights in hand and resolve hardening their expressions, search parties fanned out along the wooded trails. Every rustle of leaves, every broken twig was scrutinized, as if even the smallest detail might unlock the mystery behind the vanishing of the two young girls. The initial response was a blend of organized community effort and the methodical precision of law enforcement. Local authorities quickly cordoned off the area down the Monon High Bridge and began a systematic search. Officers combed through the underbrush, retracing every possible step the girls might have taken. Families clung to hope, each new search effort a desperate bid to reclaim what had been lost. The air was thick with tension and sorrow, as every passing minute deepened the collective anxiety. At the heart of the investigation was the solitary digital clue, Libby's Snapchat photo of Abby on the bridge. In that single image, forensic analysts saw not just a moment of innocent exploration, but a potential key to understanding what happened next. The photo was carefully examined as every pixel scrutinized under magnification. Investigators noted the angle of the shot, the lighting, and even the shadows cast across Abby's face. Every detail, however minor it seemed, was logged and compared with a broader timeline of events. Though the image did little to explain the disappearance outright, it provided a crucial temporal marker, the last known sighting of the girls. Simultaneously, Local detectives began to gather witness statements from anyone who might have been in the vicinity that afternoon. Neighbors recounted passing cars, and hikers mentioned seeing an unfamiliar figure near the bridge. Among these accounts, one recurring detail stood out: a vague description of a solitary individual seen moving along the perimeter of the reserve. This figure, later referred to in media reports as Bridge Guy, emerged as a mysterious thread in the investigation. Witnesses described him as a man of indeterminate age, his features obscured by distance and the low quality of ambient light. Some recalled that he seemed to be watching the bridge, while others noted that he appeared to be moving with a purpose that contrasted sharply with the otherwise aimless wanderings of local residents enjoying an afternoon outdoors. The term Bridge Guy soon became a shorthand in investigative briefings as spectral presence, whose identity was as elusive as the truth behind the disappearance. His brief appearance in several witness accounts prompted law enforcement to widen the scope of their inquiry, canvassing not only the immediate area, but also the local community for any record of individuals matching his description. Despite the urgency, however, solid evidence connecting him directly to the case remained frustratingly out of reach. His image was too blurred, his features too indistinct to build a concrete profile, leaving investigators with a tantalizing but incomplete puzzle piece. As the hours turned into days, the investigation took on an almost relentless quality. Teams of detectives and forensic experts began to analyze the physical evidence recovered from the scene, though the search had uncovered few tangible traces of the girl's presence as stray hair, a piece of fabric that might have come from a piece of clothing. The lack of a struggle or overt signs of resistance raised troubling questions. In many cases, the absence of expected evidence was as perplexing as its presence. Why were there no clear indicators of a struggle? Had the girls been taken swiftly, leaving no marks behind? Or had something more sinister been at play? Amid the search for forensic clues, investigators started compiling a timeline based on every piece of available data. Libby's phone records the digital metadata from the Snapchat photo, and even the timestamps from nearby security cameras became part of an intricate web of information. Analysts pored over cell tower data, trying to pinpoint the location of any mobile device signals that might belong to a person of interest. Although the information was fragmented, every new detail was carefully cross-referenced with witness statements and physical evidence from the scene. The community's involvement in the search provided both hope and challenges. Volunteers, driven by both desperation and civic duty, joined the official search teams. Their intimate knowledge of the local areas sometimes proved invaluable, recalling secret paths, hidden clearings, and obscure trails that might otherwise have gone unnoticed by law enforcement, unfamiliar with every nook of the reserve. Yet, the influx of well-meaning but untrained searchers also occasionally muddied the waters. Multiple parties combing the same area led to overlapping efforts, and in some cases, potential evidence was inadvertently disturbed or lost. Throughout this process, media coverage of the disappearance intensified, adding a layer of public scrutiny to every investigative step. Local news outlets broadcast continuous updates, capturing both the raw emotion of the families and the diligent work of the police. While this brought a measure of solidarity to a devastated community, it also amplified the pressure on investigators to produce answers quickly. Every rumor, every offhand comment by a witness, was dissected and debated by experts and amateur sleuths alike. During one particularly tense afternoon, a small breakthrough occurred when a local hiker reported encountering a man matching the vague description of Bridge Guy near the reserve. Though the details were sparse, the hiker recalled that the man had been moving along a secluded path, seemingly detached from the activity of other visitors. This account prompted investigators to revisit parts of the reserve that had previously been deemed low priority. Armed with new questions, officers re-examined the area with fresh eyes. They searched for any overlooked traces, scuff marks on the ground, disturbed foliage, or even discarded items that might have been left behind by someone passing through. In parallel, forensic teams undertook a meticulous search of the bridge itself. The aged wooden planks, weathered by time and nature, were re-inspected for any signs of tampering or evidence that might have been hidden in the cracks. Samples were collected, not only in hopes of finding physical traces of the girls, but also to identify any foreign substances that might hint at the presence of an external actor. Although initial tests yielded little conclusive evidence, every minute detail was cataloged for future reference. In cases like these, investigators knew that sometimes evidence would reveal itself only after painstaking reanalysis. As investigators sifted through the gathered data, the growing complexity of the case began to suggest that nothing about the day's events was as straightforward as it first appeared. The absence of clear evidence of a struggle at the bridge raised the unsettling possibility that Libby and Abby may have been taken quickly, or even that they had been lured away by someone who knew the area well. Such possibilities led to heated internal debates among law enforcement officials. Was it more likely that a single individual had orchestrated the entire sequence of events? Or could there have been a series of missteps and unforeseen encounters that culminated in the girl's disappearance? Among the critical questions was the puzzling lack of forensic evidence linking any suspect to the scene. While investigators were able to retrieve traces of the girl's presence, nothing conclusively pointed to a specific individual. In the absence of overt signs of violence or struggle, the investigation began to consider more subtle, insidious possibilities. Could the perpetrator have been someone who had observed the girls closely, a neighbor, perhaps, or an otherwise unremarkable member of the community who was able to blend into the background? These theories, though disturbing, gradually gained traction as the investigation unfolded. The mounting pressure to provide answers was felt not only by law enforcement, but by every resident of Delphi. Every whispered conversation in local coffee shops, every cautious glance exchanged on quiet streets, spoke to a community coming to grips with the unthinkable, that the very fabric of their everyday lives might hide a secret, a darkness that had stolen away to young souls without warning. Over the next several days, investigators expanded their inquiries, tapping into statewide resources and consulting with forensic experts from outside the immediate area. With each new perspective, the puzzle grew more intricate, and the urgency to find a breakthrough intensified. Team meetings stretched late into the night as detectives reviewed reams of data, debated conflicting witness statements, and formulated new hypotheses to explain the inexplicable. Each lead, no matter how small, was followed with unwavering determination. In one such meeting, the discussion turned once again to the elusive bridge guy. Though his identity remained shrouded in mystery, a consensus emerged: if he had been present on that fateful day, then any information, even a single, seemingly insignificant detail, could be the key to unlocking a broader understanding of what had transpired. Investigators resolved to canvass every possible avenue of inquiry, including interviews with locals who might have seen or heard something out of the ordinary. On that day, community bulletin boards, social media groups, and local radio stations became conduits for disseminating information and gathering tips. Every call, every message was logged and cross-referenced with the timeline of the search, as authorities hoped that the next piece of the puzzle would finally fall into place. Throughout this relentless process, the emotional toll on the investigators themselves was palpable. Each new day without clear answers compounded the weight of the mystery. Yet, amid the frustration and heartache, there remained a steadfast commitment to uncovering the truth, no matter how deeply it might be buried. Every small discovery, every corroborated detail, was a victory in the long and arduous battle to restore a sense of justice to a shattered community. The investigation, with all its complexities and unanswered questions, soon came to be seen as a turning point for Delphi. The meticulous search for clues not only uncovered the physical traces left behind on that fateful day, but also laid bare the vulnerability of a town that had once prided itself on its close-knit unity. The hunt for the missing girls and for the shadowy figure of Bridge Guy was more than just a forensic exercise. It was a profound journey into the darker corners of a community that had never imagined such horror could exist within its midst. In the quiet aftermath of each day's search, as officers and volunteers gathered their notes and prepared for another round of painstaking work, the sense of urgency never waned. The drive to piece together the fragments of evidence was a testament to the belief that somewhere in those scattered details lay the key to bringing Libby and Abby home. If only in truth, with every new lead, every revised timeline, and every re-examined corner of the reserve, the investigation inched closer to a revelation that would eventually send shockwaves through Delphi and beyond. As the days turned into weeks and the investigation continued its slow, determined march forward, the story of the fateful afternoon began to take shape in the collective memory of both investigators and the community. The missing pieces, though still incomplete, promised that the truth was out there hidden among the shadows of the past, waiting for the light of scrutiny to reveal its secrets. In this chapter of relentless search and painstaking analysis, the investigation unfolded as both a technical challenge and an emotional odyssey. Each clue, no matter how minute, was a testament to the unwavering resolve of those determined to unearth the truth behind the disappearance of Libby and Abby. And though the specter of uncertainty still loomed large, every new discovery reaffirmed one unwavering fact: in Delphi, the search for answers was far from over, and the quest for justice would continue until every hidden secret was brought to light. Exploring the dark theories. Early in the investigation, whispers circulated through Delphi of an involvement that extended beyond a single deranged individual. In hushed conversations at local diners and in the quiet corners of community centers, some residents speculated that the girls might have been targeted as part of a dark ritual, sacrifices to appease forces or deities whose very existence defied rational explanation. Although these ideas initially appeared far-fetched, the absence of clear forensic evidence indicating a violent struggle or the typical markers of a kidnapping forced investigators to consider all possibilities. For a time, the notion that Libby and Abby might have been victims of a cult or a cult group gained traction among certain segments of the community. Theories emerged that suggested the scene at the Monon High Bridge might have been staged to mimic elements of ritualistic sacrifice. Some pointed to unusual arrangements of natural elements near the bridge, or to the way shadows and light played across the scene as being reminiscent of symbolic patterns found in occult iconography. Although no definitive evidence ever emerged to substantiate these claims, the idea of a hidden, esoteric motive added an extra layer of complexity and unease to an already perplexing case. This darker theory was fueled, in part, by the fact that the investigation uncovered only minimal signs of a physical struggle, a fact that seemed inconsistent with a typical violent abduction. Instead, the absence of overt evidence led some to wonder if the perpetrator might have been someone with an intimate understanding of the area, capable of manipulating the scene to avoid detection. In this light, the theory of ritual sacrifice, however unsettling, became a possibility that investigators could not entirely dismiss. They scrutinized every piece of evidence, from the positioning of objects near the scene to subtle anomalies in the environmental data, in hopes of finding a clue that might lend credence to these speculations. Suspects and red herrings. Amid the swirl of theories, attention soon turned to specific individuals whose lives intersected with the timeline and location of the disappearance. Among the first to come under scrutiny was Logan, a longtime resident of Delphi. Logan lived on a quiet country road not far from the nature reserve, a fact that immediately placed him near the scene of the disappearance. His connection to the area, combined with certain inconsistencies in his account of his whereabouts on that day, made him a person of interest. Logan's story, however, was a tangled one. Although he claimed to have been away from town at a local aquarium, Subsequent investigations revealed that he had even enlisted a relative to corroborate his alibi. When this corroboration fell apart under closer examination, suspicions about Logan's involvement grew. Some investigators believed that his proximity to the Monon High Bridge and the peculiar timing of his movements could not be mere coincidence. Yet, despite extensive searches of his property and a thorough review of his background, no conclusive physical evidence emerged that could definitively link him to the disappearance of Libby and Abby. In the end, while Ron Logan's behavior raised more than a few red flags, his connection to the case remains circumstantial, a troubling reminder that sometimes even the most obvious leads can turn out to be dead ends. As attention shifted, another suspect entered the picture: Keegan Anthony Kleene. Kleene was a man whose online behavior and personal history were marred by troubling patterns. Known for his involvement in catfishing and his disturbing interactions with minors, Kleene's name resurfaced in connection with the case when investigators discovered that he had been in communication with Libby on the day of her disappearance. Detailed records revealed that he had exchanged messages with her, and some accounts even suggested that he had promised to meet her the day. Although Kleene was never formally charged in relation to the murders of Libby and Abby, a subsequent search of his residence uncovered explicit images and other evidence of child exploitation. His arrest on charges related to those crimes served as a stark reminder of the dark underbelly of online predation, even if it did not directly resolve the mystery of the girl's disappearance. The juxtaposition of suspects like Logan and Kleene, the former, a seemingly ordinary man whose movements raise questions, and the latter, a man with a documented history of deviant behavior, exacerbated the complexity of the case. The investigation now faced the daunting task of disentangling a web of circumstantial evidence, digital footprints, and eyewitness accounts that painted a picture far more intricate than any one individual's guilt could explain. Unanswered questions and lingering mysteries. Even as detectives pursued these leads, numerous questions remained unanswered. Chief among them was the chilling realization that despite the myriad of clues, from Libby's final Snapchat photo to the elusive descriptions of Bridge Guy, the true sequence of events on that day continued to evade a definitive explanation. How had the killer managed to disappear without leaving behind clear, incontrovertible evidence? And why did the scene appear so meticulously arranged, as though every detail had been orchestrated to mislead or confuse? One of the most perplexing aspects of the investigation was the absence of any signs that a struggle had taken place. Forensic teams expected to find traces of a violent confrontation, yet the scene at the bridge bore none of the hallmarks of a forced abduction. Instead, the environment suggested a quiet, calculated removal of the girls, if such a removal had indeed taken place. This absence led to mounting theories that the perpetrator might have been someone who was not only familiar with the reserve, but who also possessed a keen understanding of forensic principles, a person capable of minimizing physical evidence. Witness accounts continued to add layers of ambiguity to the case. The figure known as Bridge Guy remained a spectral presence in the narrative. Descriptions of him varied from one account to another, with some witnesses describing a man of indeterminate age and build, while others offered only fleeting glimpses that left more questions than answers. Was Bridge Guy merely a coincidental bystander, or did he play a more sinister role in the disappearance? The lack of a clear profile meant that even this potentially critical lead remained mired in uncertainty, serving as a constant reminder of the elusive nature of the truth. Beyond these immediate concerns, the investigation was further complicated by the sheer volume of information and misinformation that flowed in from both official channels and the community at large. Local media, community bulletins, and social media platforms became battlegrounds for competing narratives. Each rumor, each fragment of unverified evidence added to the collective anxiety, blurring the line between fact and speculation. Some residents began to suspect that the true nature of the crime might be hidden behind layers of deliberate obfuscation, perhaps even involving individuals in positions of trust or authority within the community. These suspicions, though largely unproven, underscored the pervasive sense of betrayal and disillusionment that the case had fostered. Amidst the turbulent swirl of theories and suspicions, one thing remained clear: the investigation was far from over. The unanswered questions served as both a burden and a beacon for those dedicated to finding the truth. Each new piece of evidence, no matter how minor, was scrutinized with hope that it might illuminate the dark corners of the case. Was the killer a lone wolf, operating with a chillingly precise modus operandi? Or was there a more complex network of individuals involved? Could the unsettling theories of occult rituals hold any weight? Or were they merely a reflection of the community's collective horror? In the face of such inexplicable loss, these lingering mysteries not only haunted the investigators, but also permeated every facet of community life in Delphi. In schools, homes, and local gathering spots, the case became a somber touchstone, a constant reminder that beneath the surface of everyday normalcy, shadows could hide unfathomable darkness. For many, the unanswered questions of the day sparked a broader reflection on the nature of trust and safety. How could a community that once prided itself on its warmth and cohesion come to harbor such a profound secret? And most troubling of all, if the truth could be so deftly concealed, what other hidden dangers might lie just out of sight? In countless interviews and town meetings that followed, residents voiced their concerns and theories. Some expressed a belief that the answer might lie in the unassuming faces of those who walked the streets each day, the idea that the killer could be someone known and trusted, someone who had long blended into the fabric of everyday life. This notion, as chilling as it was, resonated deeply with a community that had been forced to confront the unsettling possibility that evil need not always be monstrous in appearance. Sometimes it could be shockingly ordinary. Investigators, too, were not immune to the psychological toll of these persistent uncertainties. Late-night strategy sessions and long hours poring over photographs and witness statements became the norm. Every new lead was treated with cautious optimism, tempered by the sobering reality that with each step forward, the case only seemed to become more convoluted. The deeper they delved into the mystery, the more it became apparent that the disappearance of Libby and Abby was not a simple case of abduction or random misfortune. It was a puzzle with far too many missing pieces, each one critical to understanding the full, grim picture. As the investigation progressed, internal debates grew more heated. Some detectives argued that the evidence pointed unequivocally to a single individual, a calculated, cold-blooded predator who had meticulously planned every aspect of the girl's disappearance. Others contended that the very nature of the evidence suggested a more collaborative or even ritualistic element, hinting at the involvement of multiple individuals or a group with shared beliefs. This divergence of opinion reflected the broader uncertainty that had come to define the case. With each theory and hypothesis advanced, the lines between fact and conjecture blurred further, leaving everyone involved with more questions than answers. In the midst of these debates, one element remained undeniable: the enduring impact of the case on the collective psyche of Delphi. The unresolved questions, the haunting theories, and the specter of potential suspects all converged to create an atmosphere of perpetual vigilance and a profound, lingering grief that could not be easily assuaged. Every unexplained detail, every anomaly in the evidence, served as a painful reminder of the day when the bright lives were extinguished and the community's innocence was forever shattered. Even now, as investigators continue to search for the final pieces of the puzzle, the case of Libby and Abby remains emblematic of the challenges inherent in unraveling a mystery that straddles the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. The theories, the suspects, and the lingering questions all serve as enduring testaments to a tragedy that defies simple explanation, a tragedy that forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about the nature of evil, the reliability of our perceptions, and the fragile veneer of normalcy that covers our everyday lives. In the end, the investigation into the disappearance of Libby and Abby is as much about confronting the unknown as it is about seeking justice. It is a journey into the heart of darkness, a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling truths are those that lie hidden beneath layers of doubt, speculation, and human frailty. And as the search for answers continues, the community of Delphi remains united in its determination to honor the memory of two young souls by never allowing their story to fade into obscurity. In the midst of the unfolding investigation and a community gripped by fear and uncertainty, a moment arrived that would bring the darkness into sharp public focus. It was in 2019 that Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter took the stage. At a highly anticipated press conference, a gathering that would leave an indelible mark on Delphi and set the tone for the renewed search for answers. The atmosphere in the packed room was thick with tension. Reporters, community leaders, and local residents had come together, each person desperate for clarity in the midst of chaos. As Superintendent Carter began to speak, his voice carried a weight that transcended the usual formalities of a police briefing. With measured calm, he addressed the gathered crowd, making it clear that the case of Libby and Abby was far from over, and that the killer responsible for their disappearance might still be among them. "I know you're out there," he declared, his words resonating in the hushed silence of the room. "I believe you are hiding in plain sight." This stark admission sent a ripple of shock through everyone present. It was not every day that a law enforcement official would directly address the possibility that a dangerous individual was living undetected within the community of revelation. That shook the very foundation of Delphi's sense of security. Superintendent Carter went on to explain that after years of painstaking investigation, new intelligence and evidence had led authorities to a chilling conclusion. The person responsible for this heinous crime had blended seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life. His words were deliberate and unyielding, a reminder that evil does not always wear an obvious mask. In his measured tone, he recounted how the investigation had followed countless leads from grainy photos and digital traces to conflicting witness accounts, only to find that the suspect might be someone who had long been overlooked. For many in the room, Carter's message was both a wake-up call and a source of deep anxiety. The idea that the killer could be anyone, a neighbor, a colleague, or even a familiar face at the local grocery store was a thought that proved difficult to shake. It forced everyone to confront a disturbing reality. The safety of the community was compromised not by an outsider, but by someone who had been hidden in plain sight all along. The press conference quickly became a turning point in the case, as Superintendent Carter laid out the latest findings. He detailed how the investigation had unearthed new clues, including renewed attention to the enigmatic bridge guy seen on Libby's phone. He emphasized that the evidence now pointed to a suspect who had been careful to cover his tracks, moving through the community without arousing suspicion. This revelation, while deeply unsettling, reinvigorated the investigative team and spurred law enforcement to intensify their efforts. Outside the press conference room, the reaction among the people of Delphi was one of collective shock and dismay. News outlets broadcast Carter's somber words in rapid succession, and local social media channels buzzed with anxious discussion. In small-town coffee shops and community centers, residents exchanged worried glances and whispered debates about who among them might be capable of such a horrific act. The conference had done more than update the public on the investigation. It had shattered the illusion of safety that Delphi had long enjoyed. For many parents, the press conference served as a painful reminder of the vulnerability of their children. Conversations at dinner tables turned to the unsettling possibility that danger might lurk behind every friendly smile. Schools reported increased anxiety among students, and local organizations began hosting community forums to address the rising fear and the pressing need for accountability. The effect was profound. A once peaceful town now found itself in the grip of a pervasive unease that would not easily dissipate. Yet, amid the widespread disquiet, the press conference also galvanized a renewed sense of determination among residents and law enforcement alike. For the families of Libby and Abby, Superintendent Carter's candid admission was a bittersweet moment. It affirmed what they had long feared, that justice had been elusive, Not because the killer was particularly cunning, but because he had been hiding in the very midst of their community. Their grief, mixed with a burning desire for answers, fueled the hope that this public acknowledgement might finally pave the way toward resolving the mystery. In the days following the press conference, Delphi experienced a noticeable shift. Local authorities ramped up their efforts, increasing patrols and canvassing neighborhoods with renewed vigor. The heightened sense of urgency led to an outpouring of tips and information from residents who, now more than ever, were alert to any detail that might seem out of place. Community meetings were held, and the collective resolve to see the investigation through grew stronger with each passing day. At the same time, however, the press conference opened the door to a proliferation of theories and speculations, and interviews and online forums. Residents debated not only the identity of the killer, but also the possibility that the case might be even more complex than anyone had imagined. Some proposed that the suspect's ability to hide in plain sight suggested connections to a broader network of individuals, a theory that, while unproven, resonated with the community's growing mistrust of the status quo. Others clung to the hope that the latest developments would soon lead to a breakthrough, a chance to finally restore a sense of normalcy to a town that had been rocked to its core. For Superintendent Carter and his team, the public address was both a strategic move and a moral imperative. By openly acknowledging that the killer was still at large, they sought to galvanize community involvement, while also ensuring that no stone would be left unturned in the search for truth. The message was clear. In Delphi, no one was above suspicion, and every person had a role to play in the collective quest for justice. As the days turned into weeks, the echoes of that fateful press conference continued to shape the narrative of the case. The chilling warning that the murderer was hiding in plain sight became a recurring theme in every discussion, a haunting refrain that underscored the precarious nature of trust within the community. The residents of Delphi, now more vigilant than ever, looked around with cautious eyes, wondering if the very person they had greeted every day might be concealing a dark secret. In retrospect, the press conference marked a definitive moment in the investigation, a moment when the veil of normalcy was irrevocably lifted, revealing a hidden undercurrent of menace that had infiltrated every corner of the community. It served as a stark reminder that sometimes the most unsettling truths are the ones that challenge our most deeply held beliefs about safety and familiarity. And while the path to justice remained fraught with obstacles, the public revelation rekindled a collective determination to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. In the wake of Superintendent Carter's candid address, the search for Libby and Abby took on a renewed sense of purpose. The community's reaction, a blend of fear, anger, and resolve, became the driving force behind a renewed effort to bring the killer to justice. As Delphi grappled with the reality of its shattered innocence, one thing was abundantly clear: the quest for answers was far from over, and the chilling warning issued that day would echo through every subsequent investigation, every whispered conversation, and every hopeful prayer for the day when the truth would finally come to light. As the investigation into the disappearance of Libby and Abby continued to unravel its tangled threads, the story began to transcend the realm of a mere unsolved case. It evolved into a profound meditation on the nature of evil, the harsh realities of human cruelty, and the enduring truth of cause and effect, a timeless law that seems to assert itself, even in the darkest of circumstances. In my view, this case stands as a stark reminder that our lives are intricately woven with the consequences of our actions. The sheer brutality of what happened to these two young souls exposes a level of malevolence that defies understanding. There is a cruelty here that goes beyond simple malice, a calculated, cold-blooded disregard for the sanctity of life. It forces us to ask difficult questions. How can such darkness exist in a community that once radiated warmth and trust? And how do we, as a society, come to terms with the fact that evil sometimes hides behind the most unassuming facades? I believe that the law of karma, or, as some might say, the immutable law of cause and effect, is at play in cases like these. Every action, no matter how hidden, eventually leaves an imprint on the fabric of our reality. The tragedy of Libby and Abby is a painful echo of that truth. Their lives were full of promise and light, abruptly ended by a force that seemed to revel in cruelty and deception. And while we may never fully understand the intricacies of this case, we can learn from it that the seeds of our actions, both good and evil, will eventually bear fruit. In a way, the suffering inflicted upon these two young lives serves as a grim reminder that acts of unbridled cruelty cannot exist in isolation. They send ripples through the community, forever altering the course of countless lives. This reflection on karma isn't meant to offer comfort in the face of such profound loss. Rather, it is a call to recognize that our individual and collective choices matter. When we fail to stand against injustice, when we allow suspicion and indifference to erode our sense of community, we contribute to an environment where such darkness can thrive. In Delphi, as in many places, the disappearance of Libby and Abby has shattered the illusion of safety, leaving a lingering question. How do we rebuild trust and restore the balance that has been so violently disrupted? For me, this case is a powerful testament to the need for accountability and the relentless pursuit of truth. It is a call to action for every member of the community to look beyond the surface, to question the everyday, and to confront the uncomfortable realities that sometimes lurk beneath. It is only by doing so that we honor the memories of those lost and ensure that such tragedies are not repeated. As we reflect on the case of Libby and Abby, we must also consider the broader implications for our society. How often do we overlook the quiet signs of suffering or dismiss the unsettling feeling that something is amiss? In every community, there may be hidden dangers, evils that are not always immediately apparent, but which, if left unchecked, can inflict irreversible damage. The tragedy in Delphi is a call to arms for all of us to remain vigilant, to value the sanctity of life, and to never lose sight of the fact that justice, though sometimes elusive, is a right we must all fight to preserve. I invite you, our viewers and listeners at Truth One Shadows, to join me in this quest for understanding and accountability. This channel is dedicated to peeling back the layers of mystery and injustice, to uncovering the stories that demand our attention and our action. If you share the belief that every case holds lessons about the nature of human existence, that our actions, our choices, and even our silences have consequences, then I urge you to subscribe, share your thoughts, and help spread the word. Every new piece of information, every conversation that challenges the status quo, brings us closer to a world where such darkness can be recognized and confronted. Your support not only helps us shine a light on the hidden corners of these mysteries, but also contributes to a collective effort to ensure that the voices of the victims are heard and that justice is served. In closing, let this case remind us that while the cruelty of the world may at times seem overwhelming, there is power in awareness, in community, and in the relentless pursuit of truth. The story of Libby and Abby is not just a tale of loss and unspeakable sorrow. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a call to each of us to be the guardians of justice in our own lives. Remember, every action has its echo, every shadow a story, and every injustice a demand for retribution by the unyielding law of cause and effect. Stand with us at Truth One Shadows as we continue to explore these mysteries, challenge the darkness, and strive to ensure that every truth, no matter how deeply hidden, is brought into the light. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Truth One Shadows for more in-depth investigations into the stories that matter. Your support helps us to keep shining a light on the truth, one story at a time.